You are listening to the FORSCOM Frontline, bringing you to our soldiers on the front lines of readiness. Hey everyone, welcome to the FORSCOM Frontline. I'm Ashley and I'm your host. Today I'm joined by FORSCOM Commanding General, General Michael X. Garrett, for one last appearance on the podcast before he retires next month. General Garrett has served in the Army for 38 years and for the last 3 has been the commander of Forces Command. Today he's going to chat with us about those last 38 years, the highlights, lessons learned, advice to military families, and what he's looking forward to in retirement. So welcome, General Garrett. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, Ashley, thanks for having me. And just for everybody out there, we're doing this a couple weeks in advance of release. And, I share that with you to let you know that although I get to look at some of the questions, it's really not what I'm thinking about right now.
Sure.
But I'll do my best to give you a sense of where I am today and where we're going to be.
And, I have the questions, but I also might just come up with some on the fly. So let's just start. You've been the FORSCOM commander for 3 years now. What is one of the things you're most proud of from your time here?
That I lasted 3 years. This is, and I jokingly say that, but most of our command tenures are 2 years long.
Right.
And I am of the mind that 2 years isn't enough, to truly gain a sense for an organization, to get an organization, especially as big as Forces Command.
Sure.
Moving, even if it's just slightly off of the direction that they're on, is a monumental undertaking.
Right.
And things don't happen overnight. And so I have really enjoyed, the 3 years in this position. And, what's interesting now is, I think back to some of my initial observations and I look at where we are today, and I do see a lot of positive change across Forces Command and across our Army.
Would you say when you came in and you sort of looked at the organization and you set your own goals, do you think that we've gotten there?
Yeah, and I will tell you, they weren't my goals. They were our Army's goals.
Okay.
If you remember, Joe McConville and I came in. He came in a little bit after me, as the Chief of Staff of the Army. And General Abrams and General Milley really had the Army on a great path in terms of readiness. But one of my initial observations, and I shared this with General Milley in my 90-day assessment of Forces Command, which is really a 90-day assessment of the Army, was that, we got very, very good at the battalion and brigade installation level in terms of deployment. But some of that came at a cost of individual proficiency and small unit proficiency and mastery. And, I've been in the Army for 38 years. I've been in nothing but excellent units. And most of those excellent units, if not all, were defined by individuals who were competent, individuals who were physically fit and disciplined, and individuals who were committed to whatever the team was that they were on. And we very rarely focused above the company level in terms of training. And if you think about the fight, the actual fight, that's really where it happens.
Right.
And so I put Forces Command on a path, and I hate using personal pronouns because I don't really do anything. It's this great staff and it's a great team that we have in Forces Command. But we put Forces Command on a path to really get better at, what I kind of term the point of contact, and that is where, we make contact with the enemy. And I tell you, I get to visit JRTC and NTC every rotation, and it doesn't take me more than a day and a half or 2 days, to see, the progress that we're making. So I'm very proud of our Army and the improvements that we've made. But I tell you, Ashley, I've asked the Chief to do a study on this, and I probably won't see it. But the last 2 years have impacted us in ways that I don't think we fully understand.
Yeah.
And so I've asked General LaBeouf to dig into, go back before COVID, what we were doing, what we weren't doing, and then look at what we did during COVID to adjust to the environment, and then what are we doing now?
Yeah.
Because like I said, that is something that I spent a lot of time thinking about.
Well, and we talked, I think it was like right after vaccines came out, one of our first podcast episodes, and we talked about telework and how, through COVID and the telework and everything that really worked. And maybe that's something that we can use in the future as well and continue to do, just as a small example.
Well, here's the other thing too. I mean, and I don't think about it this way, but, most of my command, 2/3 of my command was during
COVID.
The COVID epidemic that will be written, studied, for the next 100 years. They won't talk about the Spanish flu. They'll talk about the impact of COVID. In the year 3000 or whatever. So 2/3 of my command. Has been during COVID. And like I said before, I don't think we truly appreciate, I certainly don't truly appreciate the impact on our soldiers, the impact on our organizations, the impact on our families. Yeah. And COVID was just a part of that.
Absolutely.
Right? There were other things, unprecedented.
Yeah.
Maybe not unprecedented, but there were other things that happened that certainly influenced what we were doing as well.
It's been an interesting couple of years just as a whole in our country.
It has.
I mean, really from, civil unrest and COVID and, all of these things. It's just been interesting.
Well, for me, as one as a soldier, so working through COVID, and some of it was pretty easy to see early on. I mean, units that had a mission, units that, were deploying, units that, were on heightened states of alert. They didn't have a choice to focus on force protection. They really had to figure out, okay, how do we continue to train in this environment? How do we protect our people and our people, not just our soldiers, but our family members? And so I think we learned a lot, and what I saw was an Army not full of just resilient soldiers and families and leaders, but I saw some pretty creative approaches to solving some pretty complex problems, that we were working through. And that, for me, just reinforces some of the best things about our Army, and that is, our people.
Absolutely.
And it's going to be our people that allow us to, work through, the friction of whatever the next fight is, whatever the next crisis is, and be successful.
Absolutely. So, I want to ask you, in your career, is there a moment that has stood out to you? Maybe something that you look back and it's a highlight, maybe a pivotal moment that changed, who you are as an officer, as a person?
I don't know. There are a lot of things, that I appreciate when I talk to folks, and one of them is, and it's really the biggest compliment I think anybody ever extends, and that is when they say, "Mike, you're the same guy today, that you were when I met you as a captain, or as a lieutenant." And my approach to my career has really been about people. I've tried to share, with leaders and with our folks that for me, leadership has just been a very personal endeavor. It's it's how I lead, and you can make an argument that in 2022, with all of the different ways to reach out and touch and communicate with people, that personal interaction arguably is a waste of time, right? I mean, it's not easy to get from here to California or from here to pick one of our post camps or stations.
Absolutely.
But for me, it's always been really, really personal. And, maybe this is where, my pride has gotten in the way. I just think I'm much better in person than I am virtually. And I also think that, and as I have grown in experience, during my Army career, the opportunity for me to share those things, I think was best done, in person.
Yeah.
I am always, I've never been satisfied with just about anything I've done. I can remember when I was a battalion commander, my dad, Sergeant Major Garrett, he had recently retired, and we invited him up to be the guest speaker for our battalion ball. And he spent a couple days with me. So he came, we did PT with the unit. He sat in a couple meetings. I don't think we were doing any real training, that week. We were getting ready for the ball. But he mentioned to me one night at dinner, he goes, "When did you get to be so perfect?"
Oh.
And I've never forgotten that. Because, perfection is something that we always seek. And what I've, and I don't know if I have done this outwardly, because, maybe that is one of, my failings. I tell people outwardly, and I mean this, that I'm okay with the 85% product delivered on time. But I do have this, it does bother me when things aren't, exactly.
I'm the same
exactly
way.
Right.
I can remember when I first started in public affairs, I had a boss that said, "Ashley, 80% is okay. It doesn't have to be 100%. I'm like, no, it does.
Yeah.
It does. So I 100% am with you on that.
Not 80.
No, not 80.
Okay. Right.
I mean, I'd like 100%, but I've come to realize that it's not always attainable, and it's okay.
Yeah. I think the other, so I grew up in an Army family, and have wonderful, fond memories of, my childhood, growing up, moving around. I have enjoyed, all of the different experiences that the Army has provided me, over the last, almost 4 decades. I've worked with some really, really good people. I've worked for some not so good people too, but you learn from,
Absolutely.
I have learned from each and every one of them. But, I get a lot of pride these days, when I see, now some of them are brigadier generals, right, that I knew when they were majors. But when I see lieutenants, that are now brigade commanders, when I see, one of my favorite NCOs is he was my RTO when I was battalion commander. He's now a battalion command sergeant major. Those make me smile,
Sure.
on the outside and on the inside
Yeah.
too. When I think about the people that I've had the opportunity to serve with, and how they continue to serve, and how they continue to thrive, and how they continue to make a difference in our Army.
Absolutely. And so you talked about your past, and I hope brat is an okay word.
Oh,
Being
it is.
an Army brat,
Yeah,
I was one as well. So you've been a part of the Army family for as long as you can remember.
Yeah.
And you always say that family is a really important part of a soldier support system. So I wonder, do you have any advice that you could offer a military family?
Yeah, so I think back to, again, when I was a battalion commander, and the reason I keep going back, there was a what's the term we use when there's a significant shift in society. It'll come to me. But I mean, or inflection point. So you hear people throw that out all the time. Well, I tell you what, 9/11 was an inflection point for our country, and certainly for our Army. And things changed after that. And we are still, this Army, and most of my career is going to be defined by 20 years of constant war and combat. And so when I think about families, I think about, before 9/11, when I was a battalion commander, there were battalion commanders, and I love these guys, and we all had different personalities, but, there were some guys who would work to 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock every night, right? You drive down Ardennes, and you could tell which ones, because, I think they were proud that their light was still on in their office, and they were working. I never did that.
Yeah.
If we weren't out in the field, I tried to leave every day at 5:30, 6 o'clock. And, what I remember, and I'm glad I remember this, I remember being a little bit of help to Lorelei raising the kids. So, I try to get home for dinner.
Yeah.
And, the thing that I would try to do when I was home was, give them their baths, read them their stories, say their prayers with them. And I would tell families, and we're trying to do this with our kids, right? I think, especially over the last 25 years, we do in the Army, we recruit families.
Yeah.
And, families are very, very important to us. And our families certainly, carry, I don't know if it's a bigger load than non-military families, but it's certainly a different one. And I think some of it is that they're not with their families. The Army becomes their family. What I would share with families as they continue to serve our country is to never forget about the family. And I say this at every promotion ceremony. I usually tell the military spouse that he or she wouldn't be there without the support of the spouse. Yeah. And it's always true. It's always true. Yeah. I've not had anybody come back to me and say, sir, no, I disagree with you there. My spouse had absolutely nothing to do with this.
Yeah.
And so I would just, tell the families that in our prayers, my wife and I say our prayers every night. And it's gotten to the point where, there are certain things we pray for, routinely. And praying for all of our soldiers and their families is something that we do every night. And, my guess is I will continue, to do that.
Yeah. My husband just got back from a 9-month deployment just a few months ago. And, I have 2 kids. That's a hard thing to work full time and have the kids at home. And, my parents live a couple hours away, but still, you don't have that person to do the bath, you cook dinner, they do the bath, And so, a lot of my friends were just like, how do you do it? You do it. You support your soldier and you do it.
So my daughter just made her first Army move, right? So she and her husband left Linden Oaks, and they are en route to Fort Lee for the career course. And so now this is their first move, and it's probably appropriate, but he wasn't home. So he had to go TDY to Fort Sam Houston for a month. And so her first move was by herself with a 2-month-old.
Oh, my goodness.
A 2-month-old baby. And she had one of her girlfriends. So she's smart enough. She had one of her girlfriends come for a couple days. And that's because Lorelai and I were out of town that week. Mm-hmm. And I just listen. And I'm listening to this conversation between Lorelai and Samantha. And Lorelai was like, hey, do you need help? And Sam goes, and I can only imagine, my daughter on the other end of this thing. I couldn't hear her. But she goes, yes. And she goes, all right, somebody will be able to help you. Well, that somebody just happened to be a 3-star commander's spouse, who stopped doing what she was doing to help my daughter. And that's what Army families do for one another.
Absolutely.
And the other neat thing about that is, my daughter, now she's seen us do this, but she's going to do that. Yeah. Right? So that's what Army families do. And I had this conversation with one of my buddies who's not in the Army, and I said, hey, I'm imagining the same kind of thing goes on, outside of the Army. And he really couldn't tell me.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but I do know that our Army families are really, really special. And just like you mentioned, Ashley, our parents are single parents, probably more often than not over the course of a career, and it really does take everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. My kids are 4 and 6, so we haven't had to do the move with the school. And I know that I did it when I was a kid, but it kind of breaks my heart a little bit just to even think about that, to have your kid get comfortable in a school and an environment and have the friends in the neighborhood and then have to uproot them. And we haven't done it yet, but
get over it.
I know.
Actually,
I know.
so this is another, and this is just my observation. Maybe the other people have different experiences, but, prior to 9/11, and maybe because we weren't being deployed like, we have been over the last 20 years, but I don't remember families separating themselves or families making decisions to stabilize, the spouse and children and
Right.
allow the husband. I mean, I see that in a lot of different countries. For instance, if you go to Europe, it's commonplace if you're in the British Army for your family to stay wherever you live, and for the service member to kind of move around.
Oh.
One, they don't move around as much. Two, it's not that big a place.
Sure.
But that is something that's always concerned me because one, it really takes both parents.
Yeah.
If you have two parents, it
Yeah.
takes them both, to raise a family.
It is not something that I would sign up to do. I appreciate the help that I get. I appreciate not having to do baths every night,
Yeah.
as small as that
Yeah.
is.
Oh, yeah.
And having help to take kids, to sports and ballet
Yep.
and all of that stuff. It's very nice when they come home and you have that help again. Now, reintegration is hard, I'm not going to lie, but to have that support back.
I think, like I said, we've learned a lot over the last 20 years, and we've put a lot of pressure on our families. I think the Army's done a wonderful job of acknowledging the challenges and then doing everything that we can, to support our family members better. And not just, and again, what we did prior to 9/11 was one thing. What we've been doing for the last 20 years is another thing. But I think what we're going to have to do going forward is going to be something even different, right? And we just need to be agile enough to change along with the young men and women who are joining the Army. And the goal is that we take care of all of our Army families, and they see this as not a job but a profession. And something that they want to spend the rest of their life doing. Yeah.
So speaking of, rest of your life probably is not the right word. So I want to start with, we're sitting here, you're on the brink of retirement, 38 years. What does that feel like? I know we have a few weeks still, but, when you think about that.
Yeah, sometimes, there have been a few moments of reduced anxiety, and I don't think I'm or at least outwardly, I don't think people can tell when I'm stressed. You may be able to tell pretty quick when I don't approve of something or if I'm upset about something.
Yeah.
But generally, I think I do a pretty good job of managing, the anxiety and the stress associated with the positions that I'm in. But there have been, I will tell you, over the last probably 2-3 weeks, like moving out of the house last week, there were a couple times there where, I just, felt different. and I said, I could get used to this.
Yeah.
Because, we don't really appreciate it. And I've had a couple of, people these are friends of mine, friends that I've known my entire career who've recently retired, and they've reached out to me, and they basically said, hey, it's not as easy as as a lot of people may lead you to believe. So we're working through it. I don't know how. I don't know exactly how I feel about it right now. There's certainly a lot I'm going to miss. Last week I was able to attend the battalion changes of command for my aide and for one of the lieutenant colonels in our initiatives group. And it was neat sitting there, watching these nice, battalion change of command ceremonies in the same field where I took command.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to miss, there's a lot about the Army that I'm going to miss. As much as I try to be just a normal person, I know, it's not lost to me that I'm a 4-star general, and it's certainly not lost to my wife, all the help that I have come to rely on over the last. So that's one of the things. So I'm actually trying to up my computer skills.
Okay.
Like, for instance, you all take down 25 fake Facebook pages every
Right.
week. maybe when I'm out of this job,
Nobody will want to be you.
They won't care, right? We don't want to be Mr. Garrett. We want to be,
That's funny.
FORSCOM Commander Garrett. But I'm going to learn how to do some of this stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of actually excitement, there, because normally when I choose to do something, I do it to a high standard, or at least a high standard according to me.
Yeah.
And so some of this I'm really looking forward to.
Oh, I'm sure. So obviously, I'm sure you're looking forward to being a grandpa as well. You just mentioned your first granddaughter. Is there anything else in particular?
So I would, like a lot of people, I would like to capture, my experiences. And I don't know if that's a book. I don't know what it is. But I really have thought a lot about writing a book. And again, when I thought about writing a book about myself, that wasn't very exciting to me. But when I thought about, writing about my dad, I'm like, that may work, right?
Yeah.
Because that's really where I learned a lot, and he's really been the example, for me for most things,
Sure.
for my entire life. So I'm looking forward to doing that. I'm never gonna divorce myself from the Army.
Sure.
I really, and I'm actually excited about, future opportunities to engage, Army leaders at all echelons, and so I'm going to figure out how to do that. The other thing I'd like to do, and I haven't figured this part out yet, but, I have grown to know and love the Guard and Reserve in a way that I didn't. I certainly have always appreciated them, but not like I do now.
Yeah.
And, over the last 3 years, it's really, I think in terms of my own professional growth, learning more about, the Guard and Reserve. And again, not just their missions, not just their readiness requirements, but really their families, their lives, the people. So, I don't know what General Jensen or General Hokanson, would have me do, but, maybe just as a proud, American citizen, look for ways to continue to support the whole Army, not just the active component.
All right. And so we are running out of time, but I have a couple of questions
that we're good.
I really want to get to. So what sort of advice would you offer to soldiers and their families about getting through the hard times? I know we talked about families a little bit before, but.
Yeah. Well, I think one, acknowledging that they're going to be hard times. The second thing is, and I learned this when Lorelai and I went to our first marriage kind of seminar. So, she'd been beating me up for years about going on one of these marriage retreats, and I'm thinking, we don't need to go on a marriage retreat.
Yeah.
What's wrong with our marriage? I think it's pretty good. Well, we went on this thing, and I tell you what, boy, I learned a lot about me. I learned a whole bunch about Lorelai. But what I also learned is that, and I think many of us in the confines of our own homes, as things happen around us, sometimes we think, this has got to be the most dysfunctional place, on the planet.
Yes.
So there was, I was relieved to learn that my marriage is no better or no worse than most others.
You're not alone.
No, they're all the same. And you know what? That was really helpful for me.
Yeah.
Walking away from that weekend going, okay, we're never ever going to be perfect, but the things that stress marriages stress marriages.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter, what your rank is. And so, what I would encourage, everybody out there. I think the Army Strong Bonds program is very important, and something that we should continue, to resource. I would encourage, family members, if you go to a church, there's probably some kind of marriage enrichment, seminar out there. Our military family, what are those, the MIFLICs?
Life counselors.
Life counselors, are a great resource.
Yeah.
And so that's what I tell families. I mean, like, the other piece is, nobody wants to go. I don't think anybody wants to go to counseling, or, and I don't care what kind of counseling it is, marriage counseling, financial counseling. But, we all need all of that. And, what's neat is, I remember, my son when he was, I think he was in first grade. We lived at West Point, and the school that he went to was right out of our back door and about half a mile down this sidewalk. But just so he could sit there, eat his breakfast, and look out the window and see school. And I tell you what, that joker every day, we taught him how to tell time, but that joker. He's like me. He never wanted to be late for anything. He's a first grader. And every day he'd be like, okay, got to go. I don't want to be late. And so my wife goes, he needs counseling. I said, what? What do you mean counseling? He didn't need counseling. That's my son. What do you mean counseling?
Yeah.
And I tell you what, he got some counseling, and, they were able to help him, kind of work through that. And I guess the point is, again, I think we all have different life experiences. And what I've learned a lot from Lorelei, but one of them is that help is always good.
Yeah.
I watch my daughter, over the years and how Lorelei has approached, I think what every parent and a 13-year-old daughter go through, so that's the other. I think that's the other advice that I would. Have for all of our families out there is lots of resources out there.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to use them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's no harm in going to ACS and getting financial counseling.
No.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, especially since it's free.
Yeah, it is.
So if you could do this all over again, is there anything you would do differently?
Probably start using the stuff that makes your hair thicker earlier. Because when I started, it was too late.
Fair.
Let's see. Ashley, I don't think I would do anything different.
That's fair.
I don't think I would. I mean, I think there are a lot of things with the benefit of hindsight that I would do so much better.
Yeah.
But in terms of no, I tell you, because even the struggles, we were able to learn from.
Absolutely.
And even the struggles, I think, made me a better father, husband, son, soldier. Yeah. And like I said before, I've never completely been satisfied with anything that I've done. And, This transition has a certain finality to it that the other ones have not.
Yeah.
Right. And so this one feels a little bit different. But no, I wouldn't. I don't know that I would change anything. I have really enjoyed my career. I have really enjoyed the opportunities that the Army has afforded. Me and my family. I enjoy the fact that my son's in the Army, daughter's staying in the Army, married to a soldier. I have wonderful friends. I have few enemies. I know there's some out there, but no, I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would change a whole lot.
Right.
Like I said, I think with the benefit of hindsight, there's certainly some things that I would do a little bit better.
Sure. And so lastly, is there anything you want to say to the FORSCOM team?
Yeah, it has just been a pleasure is an understatement. I mean, I have absolutely loved this job. Every morning, I'm excited to get out of bed and go work out, and on the days that I'm here in the headquarters to, ride the elevator with the people, and I've just been, this place is just so impressive, and the people make it impressive. I used to say that CENTCOM, my experience at CENTCOM as a chief down there, CENTCOM was kind of the gold standard for staffs. But I tell you what, this headquarters and the people in this headquarters have no rival, I don't think, on the planet. I don't think there's anybody, in the business that we're in that does this any better. And, what's neat is it's, and it, it is interesting. It's a bunch of in many cases already retired, military folks who want to continue to serve.
Yeah.
So no, I just thank each and every one of the staff for everything that they've done, and really for what they're going to continue to do. For General Pappas. The other thing I would tell you is, and I have to be careful saying this because, I know Drew Pappas, and I personally think he is going to be awesome. I mean, I really do. But my disclaimer is I've never had to work for him, right? But no, he is a wonderful human being. He's a great leader, great family. He and Sergeant Major Sims were in the 101st together as Division Commander, Division Command Sergeant Major. So he's going to certainly have he's going to get his marching orders from the chief, and he'll have a different way, about him. But the staff ought to really be excited, as opposed to being anxious, right. about the new commander. And then, Ashley, I also want to thank since we're talking about thanking folks, since you're here and the team's here, communicating with this vast FORSCOM, not audiences, is a monumental undertaking. And, one of the things that I've never really done well, and again, I don't think that I would change it, but I've never really been, all that aggressive and communicating to the press, and I've just never, I don't know, I just never done it. But somebody's got to tell our story, and in the age, in today's age, if you don't tell your story, somebody else is going to do it for you. And what I like about this FORSCOM Public Affairs team is that you all have done, I think, a tremendous job. I mean, the Frontline, podcast, I think is a great, opportunity. So anyways,
well,
thanks,
thank you, sir.
Thanks to all of you. And again, you mentioned it, Ashley, but, there are other military family members, so Army wife, mother of two kids. And, so not only can you talk about this firsthand because, you live it, but you can also help, our Army, communicate in ways that are useful and helpful, to our Army spouses. So thanks to you and the team as well.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to do this. This is fun to talk to you. I know it's like our last time to do it. But I also want to, just congratulate you on your retirement, and thank you and your family for your service for all of these years.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Like I said, still,
True. Yes.
Still have a few more weeks.
Yes. But
thanks, Ashley.
I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Thank
Ashley.
you.